Welcome to Introduction to ES6. After watching this video, you will be able to define ECMAScript 6, also known as ES6, and describe how to use new features that have been added to JavaScript as part of ES6. ES is short for ECMAScript. Ecma is a standards organization that creates a wide range of global information and communications technology standards. JavaScript adheres to Ecma's specification ES6, which came out in 2015. The newer versions of ES are named after the year of release. The most recent is ECMAScript 2020. ES.Next is a dynamic name used to refer to the forthcoming version of ECMAScript. ES6 is a version with changes that had a major impact. In JavaScript, the main changes are let, const, arrow functions, promises, and class. You are familiar with using variables, or vars. A var has a global scope. Once declared, a var can be used or referred from anywhere in the code. This is challenging, especially with huge projects where you have many variables to maintain. In ES6, you use let and const in addition to var. Let allows you to restrict the scope of variables within the block where they were declared. This limited scope is called local scope. In this example, num has scope just within that block. Line 7 will throw an error as num is out of scope. Const allows you to declare constants whose values cannot be changed. Line 3 throws an error because num is defined as a constant whose value is 5. You can use both let and const in React programming. Arrow functions allow you to declare functions the same way that you declare variables. Using this syntax is a shorter and cleaner way to work with functions. What you see here is how a function was written in the older ES5 JavaScript. Below, you can see how it is written in ES6. A function can also be declared with let and const just like a variable. This function does not take any parameters and has only one statement. Notice that there are no curly brackets. Arrow functions are called like normal functions. They can also be passed as parameters for callbacks. Here, the arrow function sayHello is passed as a callback parameter to setTimeout. Arrow functions also take parameters like normal functions. They can return a data type or an object. Here you can see a function that takes one parameter. The function brackets are not mandatory. There is only one line of code, but because the code returns a value, it must be in curly brackets. This is a function that takes two parameters. The function brackets must be put around the parameters list. This function also has just one line of code and returns nothing, so it does not need curly brackets. This is a function that takes two parameters and returns one value, and this is a function that takes two parameters and has two lines of code. The promise object represents the eventual completion of an asynchronous operation and its return value. When you invoke an asynchronous operation, a promise is in a pending state. When the operation executes successfully, the promise is said to be fulfilled. When the operation fails, the promise is said to be rejected. In the first example, you have an arrow function promiseArgument, which takes two parameters, resolve and reject. If the current time in milliseconds is divisible by 2, this arrow function invokes resolve with success as a parameter. If not, it invokes reject with failed as a parameter. This function is passed to the constructor of the promise object. In the second example, instead of creating promiseArgument, you are directly creating the function in time with the promise constructor. The behavior in both cases is identical. Object-oriented programming was made feasible in JavaScript with the introduction of class. Class is a template or blueprint for creating objects. Classes in JavaScript are built on prototypes. Prototype is a property of all JavaScript objects, including functions. A function can be used to create an object instance. Here, this refers to the current object, but not all object-oriented programming concepts are available with function prototypes. The concept of class was built on the premise of function prototype to extend object-oriented programming to JavaScript. Here, the first console log will print the entire prototype of the person1 object. The second console log will print the name, and the third console log will print the age. Class can have a constructor, which is a method that is called when you want to create an object of class. The body of the class is the part that is in curly brackets. Here, rectangle is the general class. All rectangles have some height and width, which are the properties. When you create a rectangle object, you pass the height and width as parameters to the constructor. MyRectangle is an object constructed with the rectangle class. In this example, an object of the class can be created using the new keyword. The properties are set to the current object that is being created using this as the keyword. Rectangle is the blueprint. The keyword helps to set the properties for the MyRectangle object. In JavaScript ES6, a class can inherit from another class. The class that is inheriting one other class is called the subclass. The superclass is the class being inherited by the subclass. The subclass inherits all the attributes and methods of the superclass. React components use inheritance to build user-defined components. The subclass has a special privilege to call the superclass constructor with the super method call. A square is a rectangle with the same value for width and height. Here, if the height is not the same as the width specified, the width will become equal to the height. In this video, you learned that new features that were introduced in JavaScript as part of ES6 are let, const, arrow functions, promise, and class. You can create different types of arrow functions depending on the parameters, return values, and lines of code. And object-oriented programming was made feasible in JavaScript with the introduction of class.